of you know, remember, or did you see the topic for today, what it is, aside from the ministers? What is it? Who are the poor? Who are the poor? Now, I want to begin by putting this in a little bit of context in reminding us that the theme for the year with Centers for Spiritual Living is spirituality in action. And every month there is a topic like this, who is the poor? And in the past, the last time I spoke, it was diversity and inclusion. And all of these things call us to action. The other thing that is so important about this is that we are clear that this is spirituality in action. That this is not action that is formulated by fear or pity or a belief that there truly is not enough. Because we know conceptually and spiritually with the spiritual principle that if our actions are guided by that energy of any kind of fear or lack, belief in limitation, that I'm limited, that somebody else is limited and can't take care of themselves, or if I can't even take care of myself, then I'm no good to anybody else. So I reminded myself of that, and the value or the virtue, if you will, behind spirituality this month and the question, who is the poor, is compassion. Compassion first towards the self and whatever I may be experiencing that that produces an effect in me to feel poor in spirit. So the science of mind point of view, as one of the science of mind points of view, as stated by Dr. Holmes, is the nature of God is incarnated in every soul. All are whole, perfect, and complete, just as they are. In other words, we will never be any more whole or complete or perfect than we already are right now. Because the truth of who we are is changeless. So that brings me to the realization that I'm not working to change myself, that I'm working to release those false beliefs that cloud my vision about the truth of who I am, that is always there. Because it can only work through me if the thing itself, divine spirit, infinite mind, the idea of wholeness and goodness and completeness can only work through me as me according to my belief. According to where I am putting my faith. So Dr. Holmes goes on to say in this quote, if we are perceiving quote unquote poor, then we are experiencing separation from God. In truth, there is no separation. It is my belief in my own inadequacy or another's inadequacy, or my belief that there isn't an answer to remedy this thing that we are all in some way, shape, or form suffering from, which is our belief that we are not enough. Our belief that the things that we are facing as humanity are practically impossible to solve. That's what we're working with, is the belief. So in Gary Simmons' book of the month, The Eye of the Storm, he lays out four different ideas that we can use to support ourselves in this process. And they are communication, they are communion. And I translate that to connection, connecting with the truth of who I am. And I do that through communicating and affirming and setting aside all the things of the mind that stand in the way, that have me agitated or doubtful or fearful or just plain old feeling off center. So communion equaling connection. The second is to deal with our misperceptions. And when I read about misperceptions and thought about if I'm having a misperception about myself, someone else, or something that is going on, the question that automatically came up for me is, what triggers that? What happens in me that moves me off my center, and what is the trigger to move me off my center to be living in misperceptions about what really the truth is? The third thing that he talks about in the book is our purpose. He says our purpose is to be God in expression. So we know it. I know that each one of you that are sitting here believe in this idea, or you wouldn't be here week after week, or whenever you keep coming, month after month, year after year. So I'm talking to the choir, but when I'm talking, I'm also talking to myself, because as I think about these things, this is what comes up for me. What is my purpose, and what gets in the way of my purpose? God in expression. Wow, that's a pretty big thing. But each one of us are individualized expression of the infinite mind of God. We have access to all of those qualities. But as I talked about a few weeks ago in the idea of diversity, there is infinite multiplicity, an infinite number of ways that we are individualized, but connected with each other energetically all the time. And then the last thing that he talks about is non-resistance. Now, I know that if I see a need out there in any form, that in order for me to fill that need, that I can do a much better job if I'm doing it from a place of being filled up, from a place of being grounded, from a place of knowing that who and what I am is really the spirit that is moving through me, and that I am not, that the infinite is forever moving through me as me. And I don't know about you, but one of the things that gets in my way in terms of moving out and filling a need is doubt about my own capabilities. Yep, that's what it is. I imagine that, when you feel that, recognize that, you don't like that, I don't like it. Do we like it? It kind of, it stops you right where you are, doesn't it? And then I forget about that great idea that I had. I mean, I remember when when I first moved back to Chico, almost 2 years ago. It was the first week of June, and I had time, and I was staying at a friend's house, and I remember sitting outside on this beautiful patio and reading reading something that talked about children being hungry. For whatever reason, that is something that really gets my attention. Children being hungry. And so I went online, I went to Google, and I asked about programs to feed children in Chico. And there were some really interesting things that came up that were going on. And in my alone time, from a place of really being connected about what matters to me, I realized that I have a passion about that. But here's my confession. It's 2 years later. I haven't done anything about that. Well, I have donated some money here and there to different things around food for children and the world food hunger. But I mean, not like the ideas that this thing called you, moving through me, the ideas that I had. And I recall that over the next week that I actually talked to a couple of people about this. And I must have been looking for some kind of a specific response for them, because what I read was, oh, well, too big, or, oh, well, that's being done. That's already, being handled. And I allowed that to just take the wind right out of my sails. Now, 2 years later, gotten kind of busy. But who said, why do I tell myself that I have to do this all myself? What would it be like to just gather with a couple of like-minded people who are passionate about the same idea and just begin to talk about it? Meet somewhere and have coffee or tea and have fun with it. And let that divine energy and that passion about this topic move through me and whoever else is interested. Now, that is an idea that begins to formulate in my mind, and here's how I know it's right for me. And this is a teaching. This is about our teaching. This is about the creative process. When I think about it, when I think about that idea, I start to have emotions and I feel inspiration. And that inspiration, as I know that as I sit with that inspiration will intuitively guide me. Intuitively. Dr. Holmes describes intuition as the voice of God, the one infinite mind, the all-knowing mind that lives within us. From inspiration, I will begin to intuitively know what to do. But oh no, a trigger for me was that I had to have it figured out beforehand. But I hadn't allowed myself to be in the full process of the inspiration to receive the intuition. And from the idea, the inspiration, and the intuition, that idea begins to take form, and that's spirituality in action. And so who are the poor? Who's hungry? what parents and adults might be being judged or blamed because they can't feed their children. Where might our society build that in to our perception? Now, I have another confession to make. This is not necessarily the talk I was going to give. So, when I was first licensed, and I started teaching Science of Mind classes right here at this center, what I found was that when I started teaching Science of Mind 1 and 2, and repeatedly, that I really started learning what it was in a deeper, more personal way. And in classes, it's not uncommon for the question to come up about why are people poor? Or why is there such a fierce inhumanity, actions of inhumanity toward our fellow human beings? And what about all the things that happened? And what did Jesus mean when he talked about poor in spirit? Those that are poor in spirit. And the wisdom, the way, now this is really organic, what I'm going to say. I haven't thought this all the way through, but I know what I want to say. And we talked a lot at that time in the 90s and in the early 2000s. We talked a lot about it's just consciousness. And so if a family is suffering and a family is poor, or if I am, the truth of the matter is that it's my consciousness out picturing. And that there will always be the poor among us. Oh, well, it's always going to be there. That's how I took it. Now, there's many ways to metaphysically and a little bit more literally interpret this. So what I want to say is that this is something that in my research for this talk and prior to this, as I look at the way that these monthly themes are unfolding, that there is a shift of consciousness going on. And in principle, of course, we know that what we believe, what we truly, truly believe at the deepest level of our being shows up in our lives. And so when we look out there and we see what's going on with other people, you know, it's just kind of easy to distance ourselves from that. It's kind of easy to blame, to move to, the government should be doing it. Well, the programs aren't there. Or what about the part, well, they have opportunities and they're not taking advantage of them. And I'm just wondering if these are things that then close me off to what I have to give and what's mine to do. So isn't it amazing in terms of connection? Isn't it amazing what this community and others even outside of Butte County did when the fire happened? People didn't sit around and wait and say, well, you know, we're not going to do anything because FEMA's going to come in. Or, yeah, the government has programs and stuff like that. No, immediately, people started taking action. It was so impressive. And it got me off my pity pot, so to speak. It really got my attention, and it got me off of the place that I was already kind of in, which was about all the inconsistencies and all the things that were wrong, and focusing on that, talking about it, talking to the TV, when I would hear things, and just being in this kind of upset, complaining mode. And so what I've noticed is that in the last year, or almost 2 years, that I forgot about this passion about the children and no children being hungry. And I've just gotten all wrapped up in, you know what I'm talking about, in just all the stuff we hear and the negativity. How about if we just put it in that category, the negativity? Now, I don't know where I heard this. Reverend Kathy, you may have said this quote, but boy, did it, wherever I saw it, it got my attention. And this is Emma Curtis Hopkins. Emma Curtis Hopkins came out of Christian Science and then moved to a more metaphysical form of Christianity. And she has a very unique way of saying things. So here's what she wrote. Between you and your good, which actually belongs to you, and which you ought to have, is the idea that lives within you that there is an absence of your good. Now that really breaks it down, doesn't it? Between you and your good, with a capital G, your God, and really our God is whatever we say we believe in. Good or bad, positive or negative, life-affirming or on the destructive side. Between you and your good, your God, which belongs to you and which you ought to have, is the idea that lives within you and me of the absence of our good. And that, my friends, as we know, is what this universal mind that is a responsive power is going to take and then act upon in our lives. So what are we going to do? Well, back to those 4 things. Number 1, we're going to get connected. We're going to carve out time in our day, every day, in some way, shape, or form. We're going to develop a spiritual practice, because the truth is that people report who have a regular spiritual practice where they turn within, where they sit in the quiet, where they commune with this infinite knower that is the truth of who they are, that they feel connected and grounded, and they know that we know, you know, that you're so much more than your individual little experiences of life. That there's something very magnificent and specific about you and what calls you and your passions to move out into the world, and as Dr. Holmes said, to be an expression of God from a place of knowing. Now, this means that we have to take a very strong, courageous step to sit with, to be with, to notice what other stuff is driving us, is causing us to move to that place of believing in something other than our good. That place where we actually start to blame ourselves. But it's so automatic that we're not even aware that we do it. A spiritual practice will help us, will support us, will guide us and ground us and anchor us in seeing, knowing. There's that self-blame. I'm doubting myself. Doubt is always based in blame. And blame is based in a belief in lack. I'm not enough. And Dr. Holmes said that that is the only thing that is going on in humanity, that we don't believe that all of our needs will be met. Believe that all of our needs will be met. Believe that we are magnificent, infinite, powerful, spiritual, grounded, clear beings, individualized. I am that. That is what I am. And then we ask ourselves, and we know, right down here we know, whatever our misperceptions are, whatever our false beliefs are about ourselves, that we're not enough or we should have done it better. Have you ever had an experience where you forgot and you were triggered and you began to act and to speak from the place of separation? It's not pretty. That was pretty much the totality of my life before I came into Science of Mind. Event, trigger, event, trigger, event, trigger. And those beliefs of inadequacy, of not enough, of lacking in some way, I'm not smart enough, I don't have enough money, it's, when I say it, it's so stupid. In that it's illogical when it is when you put it up against the litmus of the spiritual truth of who we are. But it's embedded in human nature. So individually and collectively, whether it's Chico or the entire world, there are absolutely beautiful, powerful things that are going on that people are doing to make a difference, and they're not waiting for the government or some agency or anything else to change. They're just getting out there and doing it. And that's the direction that our movement is going, my friends. Like it or not. Now, what it's going to look like in the next 10 years, I don't know. The younger generation isn't going to have any of this sitting around here just talking about it. They want to be out doing it. And you know what? What I really believe is we want to be out doing it too. We don't have to wait until all our crap is healed, because that's what we're here for. There's so many joyous, meaningful things on top of all the joyous, meaningful things that we could be doing and that this center is doing. We don't even need to wait for our spiritual community to do it. And if you don't want to do it, that's okay too. Because you're still an expression of God. What needs to happen? This is a rhetorical question. What needs to happen to be really, really open to receive? And it's okay if it's not 100%. But if I know in myself that there's so much more than I'm expressing right now, that's the question for me. Now, maybe you thought I was going to give you an answer. Well, I'm not. Because the answer is already within you. Realize that at the center of your being is divine expression. That the power within you is going out and drawing back to you everything you might ever need. Non-resistance is the understanding that all things are working together for your good, even the things that look like they're not. Declare right now that you are in the midst of plenty. Declare that you experience well-being right now. Speak it out loud. Start in your car. I guess I am telling you some things you could do. I remember one day when I was working here and I came went into Dr. Carolyn's office, and I think I was doing school, and I had a little job over at Enloe Hospital, and anyway, whatever reason, maybe I had partied. I was tired. I don't know. And I said, oh, I'm so tired. And she said, well, just think about God. Now, you laugh, but wait a minute. I did it. I had to go somewhere, and I got in my car. There's the one thing I can say about me, I'm a good student. A lot of times when somebody tells me to do something, I'll do it. So I got in my car, think about God. I mean, I was really tired. And I had stuff to do, so I had to move on. I just think about God. Well, God is absolutely beautiful. Well, God is in this beautiful sky. God is energy. And I just started saying stuff that I knew about God. And guess what? I wasn't as tired. She was right. You are so right. That's see a need and fill it. See a need and fill it. And we don't have to wait. You could ask somebody else, but you could also ask yourself. Because you guys know none of this is new stuff to you. So just ask and be open to receive. I'm almost done. The whole concept of rich and poor separates us. That wasn't my idea. I found that. Thought about it. That some are poor and some are rich. And some are everywhere in between. And the haves and the have-not. So what I'm starting to look at regarding this statement is, where am I judging the poor? Yesterday, I drove by somewhere. It was raining, and there was a bus stop, and there were a lot of people that were huddled in this bus stop, and they looked homeless. I don't know, maybe they weren't, but they looked homeless. They weren't waiting for a bus, I can tell you that. And some of them looked like they were having a pretty good time. They didn't look very healthy, though. And I thought about spending your day when it's raining, hanging out in a bus stop. And I noticed that when I first, because this has been moving around in me, I noticed what my first thought was. And I have to say, it did have some judgment in it. So the good thing that I can say about that is I noticed it. The concept of rich and poor, good and bad, divides us, separates us from others, and most importantly, it separates us from our true nature. The science of mind is our way to successfully navigate the human condition. So in closing, I'm going to make a couple of statements, and I invite you to repeat after me. I'll say it and you say it. I love myself just the way I am. The truth is that my life is an expression of my God.
The truth is my life is an expression of my God.
I am beautiful, expansive, unconditionally loving, important to myself, to my community, and to the world at large. I endeavor to see the good in myself and every person and every experience that I come in contact with. One more. When I notice that I judge myself or others, I quickly forgive myself and remember the truth of who I am. I know that this is absolutely your truth and my truth and the truth of every living thing in the world. And so it is.